For the young Korean boy, it was his first day at a prestigious American school. He had already braced himself for the mocking and disdainful looks of wealthy American students. However, what surprised him the most was that the school principal himself had signed him up as the opening pianist for the school talent show, just to humiliate him. But that night, when the first note emerged from his piano, everything changed. The entire auditorium froze, holding its breath. What happened there left everyone speechless, and no one ever forgot that boy again. No one could look at him the same way. In which city were you born? Before we begin the story, please let us know in the comments below. Let's find out together. Park Min-jae, amidst the noise of Westfield Academy, hunched his shoulders and lowered his head, trying to make himself invisible. A sheet of paper posted on the bulletin board next to the principal's office caught his eye. The words were printed in bold letters: Park Min-jae, talent show, pianist, opening performance. A chill ran down his spine. He had never signed himself up. We'll finally see that Chinese boy embarrassed. Blake Harrison's mocking laughter rang out behind him. The snickering echoed down the hallway. Min-jae swallowed hard and, with trembling hands, tore the paper from the board. Fear stirred deep in his chest. How had Principal Blackwood discovered his piano skills? How could he, an Asian scholarship student mocked daily, perform in front of the whole school? For Min-jae, the piano was his most intimate memory and a fragile link to a lost past. But now, it had become an instrument of public humiliation. That evening, on the bus ride home, Min-jae stared out the window. His grandmother, Mrs. Seo-yun, was probably waiting for him. She had sacrificed everything for him. Perhaps it was time to repay that sacrifice, even if he felt like a part of him had died with his parents. Even if it meant exposing his wounded soul to those who looked down on him. On the way home, he heard the voices of people echoing in his mind. He's from China. Are you Japanese? I can't understand a word he says. No one cared that he was Korean. He was simply the other. Arriving at the apartment, Min-jae paused in front of the door. How could he explain this to his grandmother? How could he avoid this humiliation? Before opening the door, he took a deep breath. He couldn't let down the wrinkled face that had watched over him so lovingly. Min-jae, is that you? His grandmother's warm voice welcomed him. As he dropped his backpack, he forced a smile. But Grandma Seo-yun could not be fooled. She immediately saw the weight on her grandson's shoulders. Something happened at school today, didn't it? She asked gently. Instead of answering, Min-jae handed her the crumpled paper. Her eyes widened. She didn't understand English perfectly, but she recognized the word pianist and the shadow on her grandson's face. I'll explain tomorrow, Grandma. I just want to rest now. She nodded, but Min-jae knew. Tomorrow he would have to decide. Would he run away or face it? That day, in their small Busan apartment, the memory of the rain falling outside the window remained vivid in Min-jae's mind. 2 years earlier, at 16, he had been an ordinary high school student. That day, as usual, after school, he had come home to practice the piano. While Chopin's Nocturne echoed in the room, the phone rang. Is this student Park Min-jae? At the voice of a stranger, Min-jae's heart tightened. He didn't remember what else was said after the news of the accident, on the way to his mother Hyun's concert with his father. All that remained was the sound of rain against the window and the sensation that his heart had stopped beating. It had been a special performance for his mother, a nationally acclaimed pianist. Their car, en route to Seoul, had skidded and overturned on the highway. Only the driver survived. From that day on, time lost all meaning for Min-jae. The grand piano at home was covered with a white cloth, and the space once filled with music fell into silence. Grandma Seo-yun could only watch, as her grandson faded day by day. "Minjae, look at this." One morning, she handed him an envelope. It was a scholarship offer from Westfield Academy in the United States, recommended by a former colleague of his mother's. It was an opportunity his mother would have dreamed of if she were still alive. Minjae read the letter in silence. For the first time in a long while, emotion returned to his eyes. "Let's go together." At Grandma Seo-yoon's words, Minjae looked up in surprise. "I only have you," she said. "You don't have anyone else, and I don't speak English either, right?" She smiled warmly. "Then I'll learn." So, with 2 suitcases and a few old photographs, they arrived at Incheon International Airport, leaving behind Busan, the only home they had ever known. Grandma Seo-yoon had never flown before, but she held her grandson's hand and found her courage. "Are you really okay, Grandma?" Minjae asked as they prepared to board. "Why wouldn't I be?" she replied. "Just because I've turned 70 doesn't mean I've become a coward." As the plane took off, Mrs. Seo-yoon watched Korea shrink beneath the clouds. Tears welled in her eyes, not from homesickness, but from a fierce determination to start anew. For Minjae, she had to be strong. During the 12-hour flight over the Pacific, Minjae couldn't sleep. His heart was a mix of fear and fragile hope. What he didn't know was how quickly that fear would become reality. The red brick building of Westfield Academy gleamed in the morning light. With a 100-year legacy, this school radiated prestige. Standing at the front gate in his crisp new uniform and polished shoes, symbols of a world of wealth and privilege, Minjae hesitated. He already felt he didn't belong. "It'll be fine, Minjae," said Grandma Seo-yoon, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her face reflected both pride and concern. "Your mother always said you were special. Today's your chance to prove it." Minjae managed a reluctant smile. He didn't want to disappoint his grandmother. He knew how much she had given for this moment. Taking a deep breath, he turned and stepped into the school. Miss Elizabeth Rivera's literature class was his first. As soon as he walked in, all eyes turned to him. His almond-shaped eyes and East Asian features set him apart immediately. "Class, today we have a new student," Miss Rivera said warmly. He sat at a desk in the corner and opened the lunch his grandmother had packed with care. As the scent of kimchi and bulgogi filled the air, nearby students wrinkled their noses. "Ugh, what's that smell?" A blonde girl walked away, covering her nose. Minjae's face flushed. He tried to close the lunchbox again, but it was too late. "So, you play an instrument?" The voice startled him. It was Principal Blackwood, a tall man with thick eyebrows. "Don't all Asians play something? Violin? Piano?" he said, lifting his eyelids with his fingers in a mocking gesture. Minjae just stared at his plate. "A little piano," he mumbled. The principal burst into laughter. "I'll see for myself soon," he said, turning to leave. Minjae sat frozen, barely touching his food for the rest of lunch. From the first day he knew he had already learned what life at Westfield would be like. On the bus ride home after school, Minjae stared out the window and thought of his mother, realizing that life was going to be much harder than he had imagined. What would she have done in his place? He could still remember her smile and the voice that always said his name with pride. Minjae. But how could he be brave here, in a place that rejected everything he was? Just 3 blocks from Westfield Academy stood the small apartment where Minjae and his grandmother lived, on the 3rd floor of an aging building. The neighborhood, known among Americans as Little Korea, was home to many Asian immigrants far from their homelands. Here, Minjae wasn't a stranger. After humiliating days at school, this little enclave was his only refuge. In the small grocery store owned by Mr. Kim, a short man with a quick smile, Grandma Seo Yun sold traditional Korean cakes and sweets she made herself. Her skill was well known, not just among Koreans. American customers also came specifically to buy her rice cakes and honey cookies. While she cooked, she studied English with quiet determination. Her notes, filled with new vocabulary, were scattered across colorful notebooks. "Min-jae," she said proudly one evening as she prepared dinner, "today I learned a new word, determination. It means deciding firmly to do something." "You're the most determined grandmother in the world," Min-jae replied with a smile. That night, Min-jae came home holding the notice for the talent show, his face downcast. The kitchen was filled with the smell of soybean paste soup, a scent that reminded him of home. As he took off his shoes in the entryway, he told his grandmother about the principal's trick and his own fears. "I haven't played piano since my mother passed away, Grandma. I don't know what to do." His voice trembled. Grandma Seo Yun gently stroked his head with hands marked by time. "Your mother lives in every note you play," she said softly. "Min-jae, maybe it's time to hear her voice again." She opened a cabinet and pulled out a dusty box. Inside were carefully preserved sheet music books, the very pieces his mother had used to teach him. As Min-jae touched the yellowed paper, it felt like touching her hand. This was one of her favorites, a piece by Chopin. He murmured, turning the first page. His eyes glistened. "Yes," his grandmother said, lost in memory. She always said Chopin captured all the emotions of life. "But Min-jae," she added gently, "you need a piano, don't you?" He looked out the window. The twilight cast a red hue over the narrow Korean street. Then he remembered. Perhaps there was a way. The grand piano in the school's music room. It reminded him of his mother's. "There might be a way," he said cautiously. In Grandma Seo Yun's face, hope sparked. She could see her grandson coming back to life. After 2 long months, there was light again in his eyes. "Yes, when you're ready, let them hear what real music is," she said, gripping his hand tightly, just like his mother. As the night deepened, Min-jae's resolve grew. He felt fear, but also remembered the last time he sat at his mother's piano. That promise, once buried, now took on new meaning. Maybe it was time to break it. Miss Elizabeth Rivera was a seasoned teacher with 15 years of experience in literature. She had noticed the new Korean student's isolation. There was something in Min-jae's eyes, a sadness deeper than the usual adolescent melancholy. After class, she called him over. "I heard you're performing in the talent show, Min-jae." He nodded, tense. "I didn't sign up, ma'am. It was the principal." Miss Rivera frowned. She understood Principal Blackwood's intentions far too well. "Do you really play the piano?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I used to, before I came here." There was something in his voice that stirred Rivera's curiosity. "Follow me, please." She led him to the music room. In the center stood a majestic black grand piano, bathed in afternoon light streaming through the windows. "Would you show me something?" she asked. Min-jae hesitated, then sat at the bench. His fingers rested softly on the keys. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Chopin's Nocturne began to fill the room. In that moment, Min-jae was no longer in a foreign school. He was back in the apartment in Busan. He could almost feel his mother sitting beside him, smiling. "Round your fingers, Min-jae. Yes, just like that." The music filled the space. It wasn't technique, it was emotion, raw and unfiltered. Sorrow and longing poured out, note by note. Until the final tone faded, Miss Rivera didn't breathe. When he opened his eyes, she was staring at him, tears in her own. This, this can't be hidden, she whispered. Minjae said nothing. He didn't have to. She had seen something more than talent. She had witnessed a story that needed to be told. "Who taught you?" she asked softly. He looked down at the keys. "My mother. She was a well-known pianist in Busan." "And now?" The question hung in the air, but the answer was already written in Minjae's tears. "A car accident. 2 years ago." Miss Rivera slowly nodded. "You can practice here after class, every day. No one will disturb you." His eyes lit up. After Minjae left, Rivera remained at the piano deep in thought. In all her years, she had taught many students, but none like him. In his music lived an indescribable sorrow and beauty, and she knew that sound deserved to be heard. "Your son is special, Mrs. Hyan," she whispered into the empty classroom. "I'll make sure the world knows it." She was ready to confront Principal Blackwood. His plan was obvious: to publicly humiliate the foreign scholarship student, exploiting his shy demeanor. Blackwood disliked the scholarship program imposed by the local board. In his view, it tarnished the school's image. Minjae was the perfect example of failure. "He needs to know where he stands," Blackwood muttered to himself in his office, watching students crossing the courtyard. Among them was Minjae, walking with his head down. The talent show was approaching. The entire school buzzed with bets on how long the stuttering Korean would last before fleeing the stage. Blackwood subtly encouraged the rumors. "I hope these scholarship kids learn their place, Harrison," he said during lunch. "Could you give us a hand?" Blake smiled slyly. "Don't worry, sir. I've got a plan." Meanwhile, with Miss Rivera's permission, Minjae secretly practiced in the music room after school. Each time he touched the keys, memories of his mother returned. Strong fingers, an open heart. His mother always told him that was the way to play. Unconsciously, he repeated her words. Strong fingers, open heart. Since there was no piano at home, he practiced fingering on a paper keyboard he had drawn himself. Grandma Seo-yun carefully sewed a white shirt for the recital. It was made from fabric she had saved for weeks. In his journal, Minjae wrote in Korean, "I don't know if I can do this, Mom, but even if I fail, I want to honor your memory." Unbeknownst to him, his performance was drawing more attention than expected. Mock posters were even circulating, calling him a musical genius. Miss Rivera removed them whenever she found one. The day before the performance, she gave him one last piece of advice. "When you step on stage, don't look at the audience. Play for the people in your heart." Minjae nodded. "I'll play for my grandmother and my mother." "And for yourself," Rivera added. "Your music is your voice. Let them hear it." That night, Minjae sat for a long time, gazing at the sheet music. Tomorrow, everything would change, for better or worse. He was afraid, but also quietly grateful for the chance to use once again the gift his mother had left him. As a child, learning piano in their Seoul apartment, Minjae once had a dream: to play on stage like his mother. He never imagined that dream would come true in this way, in an American school, as the object of ridicule. And yet, maybe this was what he needed. A forced reason to begin again. A chance to turn pain into music. "Will you come tomorrow, Grandma?" Minjae asked. Grandma Seo-yun smiled warmly. "Of course. I've canceled all my plans so I can hear your performance." Minjae hugged her tightly. It felt as if the heavy burden on his shoulders had been lifted, even if just a little. Tomorrow, he would give a recital his mother would be proud of. But he didn't know that. In the halls of Westfield Academy, new schemes were unfolding. Blake Harrison and his friends were plotting the final move to sabotage Minjae's performance. 3 days before the recital, Min-jae was practicing alone in the music room as usual. As his fingers moved gently over the keys, playing a piece he had composed himself, he heard the door creak open. A girl with chestnut hair and curious eyes stepped inside. It was Emma Sullivan. Known in the school as a gifted violinist, Emma was the daughter of one of the school's major benefactors. Min-jae stopped playing, startled. "Please, don't stop," Emma said, sitting a few feet from the piano. After a moment of hesitation, Min-jae resumed playing. It was an original composition, fusing elements of Western classical music with delicate Eastern textures. Emma listened with her eyes closed, as if absorbing every note. "Did you compose this?" she asked after the final note faded. Min-jae nodded shyly. "Is it about healing?" Her voice carried genuine interest. Min-jae hesitated. "It's about my mother. She's no longer here." Emma's gaze softened. "My parents are always traveling. Sometimes it feels like they're not really here either." Between these two teenagers from entirely different worlds, silence gave way to understanding. "Just so you know, people are placing bets on this," Emma said suddenly. "Blake Harrison arranged everything." Min-jae's face went pale. Why? Why are you telling me this?" Emma smiled faintly. "Because I enjoy watching arrogant gamblers lose." She placed a note on the piano and left. "Music is more powerful when it comes from pain. Tell them my story." Min-jae sat back down and read her note again and again. He couldn't understand it. Why would someone as popular as Emma try to help him? But her words echoed in his heart. Music born of pain. His mother had said something similar. "True music comes from the soul, Min-jae." Her voice whispered in his memory, "In joy or in sorrow." After Emma's visit, Min-jae dove even deeper into his composition. He no longer tried to hide his sadness. He poured it into the music. As the night wore on, his piece became richer, more complete. For the first time, he was telling his story, his mother's farewell, his grandmother's sacrifice, his sense of isolation in a foreign land, through music. The next day, Miss Rivera noticed something had changed in him. "How are rehearsals going?" she asked. "I've decided to perform my own piece," Min-jae said with quiet conviction. "Your own piece?" Her eyes widened. "It must be beautiful." "I don't know," Min-jae replied honestly, "but it feels like me." Later that day, as he walked through the hallway, Blake Harrison intercepted him. "Tomorrow's the big day, eh, our little pianist," he smirked. "I've got $50 riding on you not finishing the first song." Min-jae looked Blake in the eye, something he hadn't done before. "Then you might lose your money." Blake blinked, briefly thrown off by the unexpected confidence. But he quickly scoffed, "We'll see." That night, Min-jae had dinner quietly with Grandma Seo-yoon. "Grandma, I'm scared," he confessed. She clasped his hand firmly. "Fear means you care. Your mother used to get nervous before every performance too." "Really?" he asked, surprised. "Of course," she smiled. "But she always said, once you step on stage, the nerves fade, and only the music remains." Min-jae took a deep breath. Tomorrow, he would find out if his mother's words were true. The auditorium at Westfield Academy gleamed under the lights. Parents filled the seats, chatting excitedly. In the back row, however, some were there to witness a disaster. They had come to see the scholarship student fail. Backstage, Min-jae trembled. He wore the white shirt his grandmother had so carefully ironed. She sat quietly in the last row, looking out of place among the polished American families. Miss Rivera approached him. "Breathe deeply, Min-jae," she whispered. play for her." She nodded toward his grandmother. Principal Blackwood took the stage with a rehearsed smile. "And now, for those who might need a bit of musical inspiration, we begin tonight's show with our international student, Mr. Park Min-jae." Laughter rippled through the audience. Min-jae walked toward the piano with heavy legs. A hostile silence filled the room, one that anticipated failure. He touched the cold keys, closed his eyes, and imagined a small apartment in Busan, not the sea of skeptical faces before him. The first notes of Chopin floated gently through the air. He saw his mother again, sitting beside him on the piano bench, smiling. His playing was precise, delicate. Gradually, it shifted, seamlessly, into his own composition, a melody that spoke of irreversible loss. The silence in the auditorium changed. It was no longer one of expectation, but of reverence. Min-jae was doing something remarkable, something none of them had seen coming. At first, a few students tried to stifle their laughter, but as the music continued, it faded. Instead, all eyes fixed on the stage. Principal Blackwood shifted uneasily in his seat. As the final note rang out, Min-jae opened his eyes. In the front row, Emma's face was streaked with tears of quiet sorrow. For a few long seconds, there was nothing. Then applause erupted, genuine, not mocking. At first hesitant, then rising in intensity. Principal Blackwood watched, stunned. "Bravo!" Miss Rivera exclaimed, her voice proud and full. Min-jae stood, a bit awkwardly, and bowed. His eyes searched the crowd until they found his grandmother. She remained seated, silent, but the tears running down her cheeks said everything. As he stepped off stage, Emma met him in the wings. "That was really beautiful," she said. "Thank you," Min-jae replied shyly. "My note helped, didn't it?" Suddenly, Blake Harrison appeared. His face was unreadable. "I didn't know you could play like that," he muttered. It wasn't quite praise, but the hostility in his voice had vanished. In the school lobby, Grandma Seo-yoon was waiting for Min-jae. She hugged her grandson silently. Yes, if his mother had seen him that night, her voice would have trembled. "I know, Grandma," Min-jae whispered. "I felt it too. It was like she was playing with me." On the bus ride home, Min-jae watched the city lights outside the window. Something had changed that night. For the first time, he didn't just think about how others saw him. He considered how he saw himself. Maybe he could belong here, after all. Maybe his mother's musical legacy hadn't ended the way he'd believed. Maybe it wasn't over. But Min-jae didn't know yet that the success of that night had only deepened Principal Blackwood's resentment. His failed plan now fueled his anger. "This isn't over," the principal muttered, standing alone in the empty auditorium. "It never is." The day after the recital, Min-jae felt as though he had entered an entirely different school. As he walked down the hallways, students looked at him not with mockery, but with curiosity, and even a hint of respect. "There goes the pianist," someone whispered. Now, he was no longer the Chinese boy. He was the pianist. During lunch, Emma approached his table. "May I sit here?" she asked. Min-jae nodded, surprised. One of the most popular students at Westfield had just asked to sit with him. "Last night was magical," Emma said sincerely. "Everyone's talking about your performance, especially the part you composed yourself." Before she could finish speaking, other students joined them. Daniel, who played saxophone in the jazz band. Sophia, a top student in music theory. They began asking Min-jae serious questions about his technique and composition. "There are elements like that in Korean music," Daniel asked. "That particular melody isn't entirely traditional," Min-jae explained. It's a mix of traditional Korean music and classical techniques my mother taught me. It was a new experience for Min-jae, students trying to understand his culture instead of mocking it. Still, not everything had changed. Blake Harrison observed from a distance. Maybe he was angry about losing the bet, or perhaps it was the shame of having been publicly proven wrong. But for now, his humiliation kept him away. The real danger, though, was Principal Blackwood's quiet fury. That afternoon, Min-jae accidentally overheard a heated conversation between Mr. Rivera and Blackwood. "It's unacceptable for the scholarship kid to perform at the upcoming event," the principal snapped. "The showcase is for students from our music department." Miss Rivera didn't back down. Min-jae's talent is among the most exceptional this school has ever seen. Excluding him would send the wrong message. "I decide what message is sent in my school," Blackwood growled. Meanwhile, at home, Min-jae excitedly talked to his grandmother about the success of the recital. Grandma Seo-yun listened with a proud smile. "You've finally shown the world who you truly are," she said. "If my mom were alive, she'd know, Grandma," Min-jae said, taking her hand. "Last night when I was on stage, I felt like she was beside me." Tears welled up in Grandma Seo-yun's eyes. They sat in silence for a while. The next day, when Min-jae went to the music room, the door was locked. A note was taped to the door stating that only members of the music club could use the room now. His heart sank. The place where he had practiced every day, the only place where his mother's memory felt alive, was now closed to him. "Don't worry," said Emma's voice behind him. "I'll find another way." Min-jae offered a faint smile, but his heart was heavy. One successful performance wasn't enough to change everything. His struggle would continue as long as Principal Blackwood tried to erase his music. But now, Min-jae was no longer alone. Grandma Seo-yun, Miss Rivera, Emma, and a few other students were on his side. And maybe that was enough. Then came a letter that changed everything. It arrived in Min-jae's mailbox, an official invitation from a music conservatory. "Thank you," he whispered. Miss Rivera had sent them the video of his recital. "Grandma, do you know what this is?" he asked, holding the letter with trembling hands. Grandma Seo-yun put on her glasses and tried to read the English text. "An audition? A scholarship?" Her voice lifted with excitement. The next morning, they dressed in their best clothes and went to the Municipal Conservatory of Music. The grand building had tall windows and corridors lined with photos of famous musicians. There, they were greeted by director Sophia Anderson, an internationally renowned pianist. "It's rare to witness such emotional depth at such a young age," Director Anderson said as she watched the video of Min-jae's recital. "I can hear the influence of the Korean school in your technique." Min-jae nodded, surprised that someone had noticed. "My mother studied at the National Conservatory in Seoul." Director Anderson smiled. "Her influence is clear in the expressive execution of your performance." The audition was scheduled for the following month. A full scholarship was on the line. As they left the conservatory, Min-jae felt a mixture of emotions: joy, anxiety, even a strange sense of guilt. "Grandma, if we get this scholarship, we could really stay here," he said. Grandma Seo-yun squeezed his hand. "My place is wherever your music can be heard, Min-jae." Her unconditional support calmed his heart. Yet he still had to make a decision. Was it right to leave Westfield for the conservatory? Or would he simply be running from Principal Blackwood? The news spread quickly throughout the school. Miss Rivera called Min-jae to her office to congratulate him. "I always knew you were special, Min-jae," she said proudly. "The conservatory is a fitting place for your talent." But in her eyes, there was also sadness. She knew Min-jae might have to leave Westfield. A few days later, Principal Blackwood summoned him to his office. As Min-jae entered, His palms began to sweat. "I've seen it now," the principal said with a fake smile. "I hear you'll be auditioning for the city conservatory." Min-jae nodded nervously. "That's a great honor," Blackwood continued. "Frankly, I think it would be best if you left Westfield. Our school may not be equipped to fully develop your talent." Min-jae saw the truth on his face. Blackwood simply wanted to get rid of him. "I must also inform you," the principal added, "that next week's Unified Voices event has been cancelled." It was the event where Min-jae had planned to debut a new composition. "Budget issues," Blackwood said dismissively. Min-jae bit his lip. He was angry, but now was not the time to show it. "Understood, sir," he replied politely. "But would it be appropriate for me to remain at Westfield until the audition results are announced?" Blackwood's expression hardened. "Of course. You are still our student." But the dissatisfaction in his voice was unmistakable. As Min-jae left the school building, he exhaled deeply. He now faced a choice between two paths: attend the conservatory for a fresh start, or stay at Westfield and stand his ground. Walking home, he suddenly thought he heard his mother's voice. "Go where your heart leads you, Min-jae, because music, in the end, comes from there." Min-jae wondered what his mother would have wanted, and the answer was already within him. Operation Piano on the Lawn, that was the name Emma gave to the secret plan. Students at Westfield Academy, moved by Min-jae's talent and story, began organizing quietly behind the scenes. "So Blackwood cancelled the event? Then we'll host one ourselves," Emma declared one afternoon, gathering a group of students after school. "There's a piano genius at this school, and silencing him would be almost a crime." Even Blake Harrison, who had once bullied Min-jae, was present. He stepped forward and offered his help, clearly remorseful. "I was wrong," he admitted, "and now we've told Blackwood we're not just going to follow blindly anymore." The tech club offered to handle sound and lighting. The sports team volunteered to set up chairs. Miss Rivera helped secure a piano borrowed from the conservatory, and the students, many of them wearing black, rehearsed outside of official school hours. One evening, Emma arrived with something in her hands, a tablet showing a video of Min-jae's mother, Hae-won, playing the piano. In the clip, she sat at a grand piano, smiling radiantly. Min-jae reached out and touched the screen with trembling fingers. "Where did you find this?" Emma smiled. "I searched for Korean pianists." "Your mother was well known, Min-jae." A silent tear rolled down his cheek. He hadn't realized how painful it would be to see his mother again, and yet somehow it gave him strength. A new peace began to take shape. It wasn't just about loss anymore. It was about a bond that transcended death. "This will be your greatest work," Miss Rivera said after hearing the rehearsal. "Your mother's soul is in it." The day before the unofficial concert, Principal Blackwood summoned Min-jae again. "I've heard rumors about an unauthorized performance," he said sharply. "This would be a serious violation of school policy. It could even affect your admission to the conservatory." This time, Min-jae didn't look away. He knew the threat was real, but he no longer felt fear. "With all due respect, sir," he said calmly, "music is not a violation. Music is a bridge." He turned and walked out. Blackwood, speechless, stared after him, shocked by the boy's newfound confidence. That evening, Grandma Seo-yun entered Min-jae's room. In her hands, she carried something special. "This belonged to your mother," she said, unfolding a white cloth. It was a hanbok jacket, white silk embroidered with delicate blue patterns. "Please wear this tomorrow for your performance." Min-jae touched the fabric gently. It still seemed to hold the fragrance of his mother. "Maybe people will laugh, Grandma. If I wear Korean clothing..." She stroked his cheek tenderly. "Let them laugh. They should know who you are and where you come from, where your music comes from. Minjay nodded. Tomorrow he wouldn't perform merely as an Asian student. He would take the stage as his mother's son, heir to her legacy. "I'm scared of tomorrow," he admitted softly. "Courage," said Grandma Seo Yun wisely, "isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward in spite of it. Now go rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." As twilight bathed the sky in red, hundreds of people began gathering on the lawn behind Westfield Academy. Not just students and faculty, entire families had come. Many had never met Minjay, but the news of the band concert had spread throughout the town. In the center of the lawn stood a small stage with a black grand piano. Lighting donated by local shops illuminated the space. From a window in the school, Minjay could see Principal Blackwood watching helplessly. Dressed in his grandmother's treasured hanbok, the white jacket and navy blue trousers, Minjay waited with a tense expression. He looked as if he had stepped out of another time. "I don't know if I can do it, Grandma," he whispered. She straightened his collar. "Tonight isn't about you or me. It's about Hyewon, and about every mother." Miss Rivera gave him a subtle signal. Minjay stepped toward the stage. Warm applause welcomed him. He stood before the piano. But instead of starting to play right away, he did something unexpected. Approaching the microphone, he broke the silence with a trembling voice. "This piece, I've never performed it in public before. My mother, Hyewon, was a pianist in Korea. She began teaching me when I was 4. His voice wavered. The crowd listened intently. "2 years ago, when my parents died in a car accident, I promised I'd keep playing." Tears gathered in his eyes. He paused, then took a deep breath. "Tonight, if your mothers are here, or even if they're far away, please tell them you love them. I can't anymore." Silent tears flowed through the audience. Emma's eyes glistened. Miss Rivera watched with pride. Minjay sat at the piano, glanced once at his grandmother, and took a deep breath. The first note was as soft as a whisper. It told the story of a mother's love, a gentle hand teaching tiny fingers to dance over the keys. Gradually, the music shifted. Traditional Korean elements that Hyewon had loved fused with Western harmonies. It was the story of a child between two worlds. The audience sat motionless, spellbound. Mothers gripped their children's hands. Even teenagers who usually stared at their phones now listened, eyes shining with tears. And then something remarkable began to happen. Dozens of people took out their phones, not to film, but to send messages. "Mom, I love you. I miss you. Thank you for everything." Some were whispering into phone calls, words they hadn't said in years. Absorbed in the music, Minjay had no idea of the impact he was having. The final note hung in the night air. A respectful silence followed, moments suspended in time. Then came the applause, thunderous and rising. People stood, clapping. Some hugged, others wiped away tears. Something extraordinary had occurred. A quiet Korean boy had done what marble halls and old traditions could not. He had humanized the elite Westfield Academy. As Minjay stepped off the stage, his grandmother embraced him tightly. Tears of pride streamed down her cheeks. "She saw you," Grandma whispered. "She heard you." And in that moment, Minjay understood. Music was more than sound. It was a bridge that connected souls, and that night it had connected them all. On the lawn where Minjay's performance had just ended, the atmosphere was completely transformed. People didn't rush to leave. Instead, they stayed behind in small clusters, quietly talking. Many came up to Minjay, not to discuss his playing, but to thank him. An elderly couple took his hand and held it for a long time. "Thank you for helping us remember our son," they said. The next morning, Min Jae's phone buzzed non-stop with notifications. The video of his performance posted on social media was spreading fast. The local newspaper published an article titled, "Young Pianist Unites the Community Through Music." When he arrived at school, the reaction in the hallways was completely different. Even students he didn't know nodded and greeted him with smiles. Blake Harrison approached with an awkward expression. "I didn't know you could play like that," he said. "I'm really sorry for everything I've done." Min Jae hesitated for a moment, but Blake's apology seemed sincere. "It's okay," he finally said. "This is a new beginning." Midway through class, the school broadcast system came on. "Student Park Min Jae, please report to the principal's office." He felt a flicker of nerves, but no fear. The success from the night before gave him new strength. On the way to the office, he ran into Miss Rivera. "Don't worry," she whispered. "There are more people on your side than you think." Inside the office, there was an unexpected guest, the regional director of education, along with the chair of the school board. The regional director turned to Min Jae with a kind smile. "I've heard a great deal about your performance last night." Principal Blackwood sat stiffly behind his desk, his hands trembling slightly. Then the school board chair spoke, his voice heavy with meaning. "We have serious concerns about the leadership shown by Principal Blackwood, particularly regarding his treatment of international and scholarship students." Min Jae stared at Blackwood in surprise. For the first time, he saw fear in the man's eyes. "For now," the regional director continued, "the principal will be placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. During this time, Vice Principal Chen will take over school leadership." Blackwood tried to speak, but fell silent under the board chair's stern glance. "And Min Jae," the regional director added, turning to him with a smile, "I spoke with the director of the music conservatory. Your audition remains scheduled as planned. But regardless of the result, you will always have a place to share your gift here at Westfield." As Min Jae stepped out of the office, Vice Principal Chen was waiting. She was an Asian American woman with a warm smile. "Min Jae, do you have a moment?" she asked, guiding him into her office. "First of all, your performance yesterday was beautiful. My parents were immigrants from China. When they passed away, music became my home. I felt that again listening to you." She unfolded a sheet of paper on the desk. "This is a new program I'm developing, a cultural exchange music program. Students from different backgrounds will create and learn music together. I'd like you to help." Min Jae's eyes widened. "Me? But You're not just a student," Vice Principal Chen said gently. "You're a bridge builder. You proved that last night." That afternoon, after classes, Min Jae returned to the now open music room. As he sat down at the piano, memories of the night before echoed in his mind. He began to reflect on which path to choose next. Should he go to the conservatory for a new beginning, or stay at Westfield and help shape a new future? The door creaked open. Emma entered, carrying her violin case. "Want to practice together?" she asked. "I found a duet, a Korean melody blended with classical harmonies." Min Jae smiled. Maybe the answer was already right in front of him. Like music, sometimes different paths can come together to create something even more beautiful. The local education office soon received a detailed report about Principal Blackwood's discriminatory behavior. Former teachers and alumni, once silent out of fear, began speaking up. And after Blackwood's departure, Westfield Academy slowly began to change. When Vice Principal Chen officially became the new head of school, her first action was to expand the scholarship program for international students. Monthly multicultural events were introduced, and the Unified Voices concert became an annual tradition. Min Jae was awarded a full scholarship to the Municipal Conservatory of Music, but he chose to remain at Westfield. "I have to finish what I started," he told his grandmother. "Follow what your heart tells you," Seo-yun said. "Your mother always did." Now, Min Jae no longer walked the hallways alone. Blake Harrison became an unexpected friend, genuinely interested in Min Jae's compositions. He even invited him to join jazz band rehearsals. Emma and Min Jae practiced their piano-violin duet together. Their performance became a highlight of the next school showcase. Like the harmony between their instruments, their friendship grew deeper. Grandma Seo-yun opened a small Korean sweet shop near the school. It quickly became a favorite hangout spot for students. American teens sampled taeok and Korean teas and learned basic Korean greetings from her. "How are you today, Grandma Park?" they'd say with bright smiles, and she would beam with joy at their efforts. At the following semester's graduation ceremony, Min Jae performed once again in the Westfield Auditorium. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Before playing, he dedicated his piece to all those who feel invisible and to all the mothers who see us even when the world does not. His music was now filled with joy and hope. It was a celebration of healing and reconciliation. Not all the sadness was gone, but it had become part of him, making him stronger. After the concert, Principal Chen stepped up to the microphone. "We are starting a new tradition," she announced. "Connection Day, a day when every student reaches out to someone who matters in their life." Min Jae felt a lump in his throat. Later that evening, at home, Grandma Seo-yun took his hand. She understood that the courage of one student had helped transform the culture of an entire school. "Your mother would always have been proud of you," she said softly. "But right now, she would be even prouder." Min Jae nodded. "My grandmother said it too. In a way, I had two mothers." The old piano that Grandma Seo-yun had bought in monthly installments now stood in the center of their living room. Every evening, the sound of Min Jae's playing filled the home. On top of the piano sat a framed photograph of Hee-won smiling at her son. Sometimes, while playing, Min Jae felt as if she were right there beside him. "Are you doing well, Min Jae?" he imagined her voice asking. "Yes, Mom," he would answer in his heart. "I'm doing well now." One afternoon, as he was composing a new piece, Grandma Seo-yun quietly stepped into the room. "Is that a new song?" she asked. Min Jae smiled. "Yes, it's called Together. It's about Korea and America, about past and present, about sorrow and hope." Grandma placed her hand on his shoulder. "My music now carries the stories of others too." "Yes," Min Jae said softly. "It's no longer just my story. It's the story of all of us." The sun was setting behind the window. A new day was about to begin, and Min Jae knew it wasn't that the pain had ended. It had been transformed into something beautiful. And that journey would continue, note by note, day by day.